what is the story, right? What is the hook?
Are you getting knocked off on that?
This sort of elephant in the room that nobody talks about that I'm happy to talk about all the time. Like, let's just put it out there.
The creative is the hard part. That's where all the value comes from.
You can't just slap a logo or an emblem on something and think that you're creating brand value.
We are designing this to be viral from the very get-go.
We're in the midst of a media revolution. You can wake up to it or not.
I told you no curveballs. I had one, or you had just one.
What's the worst that's going to happen?
All right, welcome back to the Rolle with Steve podcast. I'm sitting here with Ben Wolff today, and this is an exciting one for me because a very accomplished real estate investor, but also delves into all things hospitality on the short-term rental side of the house, vast amount of experience that we'll learn from today. You came with a very somber warning into this podcast studio today. And I think that warning is for hospitality properties at large, but particularly in the boutique hotel space, short-term rental space that you're in, there's this concept of maybe Airbnb, Booking.com, the OTAs, maybe the days of us relying on them being behind us. And the warning for these hospitality properties is if you're not building a media brand today, you're falling behind. Walk me through your thought process on that.
I mean, I've really come full circle on this. I mean, look, I grew up in the age of more commodity Airbnb offerings and when that was really profitable. I mean, I built up a management company to about 200 properties that were like that. When I think about it today, I think about we're a media company and we happen to specialize in hotels. And if I'm going to go build a hotel, I'm like, what is the media angle? What is the story, right? What is the hook for that property? So it's a totally different way to think about the world and to think about hospitality and to think about hotel concepts. So definitely have turned that on its head. When it comes to the OTAs, I mean, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're going to be around. They're too big. They have too many users. But frankly, they're built and how they make their money is on the user side, the guest side,
Sure.
More so than the host side because the hosts have to be on them, or at least they feel like they do. So it becomes this race to the bottom where if you look on the OTAs, they're trying to make you look all the same. They're trying to make it look like so you can't stand out. I mean,
Sure.
The only way you can stand out today, and some people are taking this to the nth degree, is with some crazy amenities and bright colors and just kind of doing whatever gimmicky thing they can to pop off the page.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's working. Those properties are outperforming simply because they're popping off the page. But I do think that people and guests are going to get tired of that and maybe already are to some extent. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see when that trend fades a little bit. How do you stand out? I mean, reviews is one, but that's just become so competitive. I mean, if you're not like a 4.95, then what are you doing, right? I mean, you're not. You're going to be in the 50 percentile or worse.
Yeah.
If you're not above a 4.9. So
I've seen so many of those properties now that you mention it with like the brightly colored basketball courts and like the pink hot tub. And I saw something for the first time the other day where it was an outdoor part of the Airbnb that had like this like glass dome over. Have you seen those? With like a 5K spend on it and like people are going all out and buying these things so you can sleep under the stars. Like that's the stuff people are trying to do to stand out from the rest of the pack. It used to just be a hot tub, right? Like 5 years ago. Do you have a hot tub? Do you not have a hot tub? Like you've seen it all. Like walk me through that.
All, yeah. I mean, our big differentiator, I remember when we were doing a lot of urban properties, was a lot of bedrooms. Because if you want to bring a group to to a city, right, New York or DC or something like that, it's hard to find a 4, 5, 6, 7 bedroom place.
Yeah.
So if we can create that, there's a natural supply demand imbalance.
Yeah.
And that worked great for a long time. I think there's plenty of that happening now where it's less unique. Also, a lot of the cities are cracking down, so it's just harder to do. But like, look at Scottsdale, right?
Sure.
I'm sure a few years ago, 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms were less common. Now they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So
a place to go for the fantasy football party, you know, the bachelorette party, things of that nature. Social media for this, because so many people that I knew who were getting into the Airbnbs, as they would call it. It wasn't short-term rentals back in 2019. It was like, I'm getting into Airbnb. It just insinuated a reliance on that platform. Like you just hop on there and they bring you customers and that's where. But you don't rely on Airbnb or any other OTA for your bookings. Where does social media play a role for you in the properties that you own and that you managed in the past?
Yeah, so it all started with Onera, the landscape hotel treehouse resort brand that I started in the Texas Hill Country during COVID. So we created this beautiful kind of dreamlike nature escape with a variety of different unit types, treehouses and safari tents and domes, all this cool, unique stuff that was very different for the area and kind of the US, I think, in general. So it did extremely well out the gate, like right when we opened. And when we opened, we were only on Airbnb because that's what I knew. And it was really a travel creator who I was just talking to before this podcast, who really got me into a lot of this. She hit us up on Airbnb and said, "Hey, I want to come out and do a collab post with you about your property on Instagram." And I wasn't even really using Instagram at the time. Like I don't even think we had a direct booking website. I'm like, we're doing great with the Airbnb money, right? It's
like 2020, 2021?
2021. Yeah.
Okay.
Late 2021. So you're like a unique nature stay. Like I don't need to hear about your Instagram and direct bookings, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm making $500 to $600 a night. We're close to fully booked. But I like to test things and I'm always interested in kind of like what's coming down the pipe, what's new. So we gave it a try. She had a pretty good sized following at the time, high engagement. So we had her come out and we did $30,000 in direct bookings over 2 posts.
Wow.
And that was just a free collab. We pay her now because we know that she's worth her weight in gold,
Yeah.
right? But at the time, like it was just a free collab. We did tens of thousands of dollars in bookings and like the lights turned on for me at that point. And that first year, we really focused on influencers because that's what I knew. It was inbound. It was referral. Whenever we had an influencer come, I'd say like, who are your influencer friends that are good? And so we did about 30% direct that first year, just purely off influencer marketing. We weren't doing any of our own video. I had nice photos because I knew you need like nice listing photos for Airbnb. So I had those. It was that and influencer reels, and that was it on the account. And I grew the account to like 15,000 followers or so, which kind of doing it on the side, half hour a week, somebody that wasn't really Instagram forward at the time, I was happy enough with. But in that next year, 2023, we really wanted to triple down and like, can we take this to the next level? We tried to hire a social media agency. We did hire a social media agency. It did not go great. I think that one reason that I think ultimately the agency that we've effectively created, Awasi, that I lead, is our big differentiator is that we are for owners by owners. So like we understand the owner pain point, and I feel like a lot of agencies out there don't because they're not owners. They don't own hotels. They don't run them. They don't get it. So they're just trying to get their fees, and really they're not content first. And content is the whole thing. So if you're not content first, then like, what are we doing here, right? So we went through that. Very, you could guess, right? Minimal results. I was doing better just kind of doing it myself. They would send an employee with an iPhone sometimes to get footage. I mean, it was pretty bad.
So they were making the creative instead of asking you for creative.
Well, which, by the way, I think is another problem, right? A lot of these agencies are like, they put it on you to create the content, and it's like, that's where all the value is, right? What am I paying you for? So, no, they would do it, but they would do it in like a very sort of cheap, cost-effective way, send an employee down, get some stuff on an iPhone, enough to like have an account and tick the box, which I think is what a lot of hotels are trying to do, and nothing beyond that. And so it works for ticking the box, but I'm not going to pay, $5-6 grand a month to tick the box. And frankly, Awasi's more than that. Like we charge a lot more than that. But we're giving you tons of content. Like we're sending our top-notch videographers and models, and we have pre-production meetings and script writing and all this stuff that we're doing that's baked into the rate because it's a non-negotiable. You have to do that to perform well and do well on social. So basically, the agency underperformed, and at that point, we were basically like, we got to build this in-house. This property is too Instagrammable to not optimize for content. So we have to, build out the team. So we, had a buddy who was a videographer. He came in, really like learned the strategy and content style that plays really well for these unique stays.
Okay.
And we worked with a couple other videographers, a couple models, hired an editing firm, creative associates, and the team has grown, right? Now we have influencer management people. We have somebody who runs email marketing for us, SEO. Awasi today is about 25 people and growing.
Okay.
And about half of those are on the marketing and social side.
Yeah. I mean, what you're uncovering there with the reason that you built Awasi in the first place, it seems so interesting to me because if you go back to the SMMA, social media marketing agency scam that it was, maybe there's a reason why so many hotels today and properties do separate revenue management from social media because they just think it's just one thing we have to do. We have to have a page that shows a picture of a bed and a picture of the breakfast in the morning. And the scam of it is, to your point, the creative is the hard part. That's where all the value comes from. And you're paying this, I'm going to call them today's SMMAs, who are just turn the light switch on ads and then turn them back off and on and off. It's not really designed to bring in revenue, but just to, if somebody Googles you, something needs to pop up there instead. You're very different from that.
It's more of this nebulous brand awareness, right? And I think that one of the reasons for that is this sort of elephant in the room that nobody talks about that I'm happy to talk about all the time. Like, let's just put it out there. We have an attribution problem for organic social media. GA4, Adobe Analytics, like it's all, you know what, right? It doesn't tell the story. It's not accurate. It's not reflecting where revenue is actually coming from, where customers are actually coming from. And the reason that I know this is because Onera, right? We were all in on organic social media marketing. We didn't do a single paid ad. We weren't doing anything on SEO, no PR. And my Google Analytics is telling me that like 5% of revenue is organic social. I'm like, I know this is wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm going to figure out a way to test it myself. So we went kind of boomer. We just did a survey. When you check out, when you reserve your booking, it asks you, how'd you find out about us? Okay. And it's the only question we ask. And we get like over a 50% opt-in rate. Very high.
Wow.
About 60% of those people say they hear about us from Instagram. So like that's a problem. And I know some of it is not solvable by Google. I'm not trying to say like it's all on them, right? Part of it's the nature of how social works, right? You see something, you follow, maybe you go to the website, check it out. You don't book the first time. With hotels, you almost never book the first time. You check it out, kind of log it, follow. And then when you go to book it, you've seen our reels 20 times. You're just going to Google Onera, right? So it comes in as branded search. So like, I think that that's part of the problem is hotel owners are like, we want to see the ROI, we want to see the tracking, and it's just not reflected. So we've had to come up with creative ways to show that attribution, like the survey. So that's part of the issue. They look at it like, we just have to tick the box. And there's an element of that. Like you do need to be relevant. You do need to have a social account, but it's not enough anymore to have like a pretty grid that shows like some meta image, right? I mean, that's like very circa 2015. And there's a lot of hotels still doing that, right? And the other thing that we see hotels doing all the time is, the very like slow pan, overly like cinematic, overly dramatic, very slow clips. And it's just like, it just feels like a TV commercial, right? And that's not, it's just like immediate keep scrolling. It's just too slow typically. So we try to do faster cuts, keep people engaged. We do some on-screen text, maybe the branding and like brand guidelines, people won't love it because it looks a little more kitschy in UGC sometimes. And part of that's just like the fonts that we have available to us in Instagram, which perform better. But sometimes people look at it and they're like, I don't, seeing that on-screen text, like I'm not super into that. And it's like, well, this is what works, right? This is what pulls people in. And we call it out right up front. We'll be like, couples getaway, beachside, Southern California. So somebody knows, this could be for me. And they're more likely to watch versus if they're just scrolling, they have no idea if it's for them or not.
Do you find that there is a lot of pushback from those brand teams? And the context on this, each of your properties at Onera is branded like individually in and of itself. And you're doing separate social media content just for that. For these other boutique hotels that are out there that might be lifestyle, maybe they're not, they push back on, hey, we're losing our brand image at the cost of maybe not being so reliant on the OTAs. What do you say to that brand owner in that moment?
Yeah, it's like, what do you want with your social media? I mean, what we talk about a lot now is we're in the midst of a media revolution. You can wake up to it or not, right? This is like the internet in the 90s. This is mobile in the 2010s, right? It's like, It is. It's clinging to the yellow pages, right, in the 90s when the internet's becoming a thing. It is clinging to the desktop when mobile is becoming a thing. That's literally what we're doing, or what hotels are doing when they're saying like, oh, social is just like a nebulous branding exercise.
Yeah.
People are finding their next travel destination and getting inspired on social. So that's one piece, right? They're connecting with brands on social. I mean, look at all these DTC brands that are crushing it through social media marketing and organic content. It's a way to connect with your customer in a much more authentic way.
Yeah.
It tells the customer like you get it, you're relevant and you're serving up value, whether that is a very inspiring aesthetic video, right? Which we do a lot of for these beautiful properties, or it could be humor. It could be, you're entertaining me. It could be you're educating me, but like I'm getting some value out of it. You're not just selling to me shamelessly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's how a lot of the hotel content out there that doesn't work, it just feels like I'm being sold to.
Yeah. Well, what do you see that is doing a lot of work? I've even seen some brands that are doing like social shows in order to just get engagement and attention for a brand. But for someone who's listening to this today, who's a general manager, a hotel owner, a hotelier, what do you say to them that they should be focusing on, even if they're not working with OASI to get this done? What should that focus look like?
Yeah, so certainly influencer marketing. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. You got to pick the right influencers, though. So you want them to be relevant and targeted. So we've had like big, TV stars, millions of followers come and stay at properties and move the needle zero, right? Like their audience isn't engaged and they're not a relevant authority on travel, so nobody cares.
Okay.
So we like to focus on travel creators or sometimes foodie. There's good crossover with foodies that has an audience that is likely to go to that property. So that's where we focus. That's where I would focus if you're a GM, and try to vet them as best you can. You want to look for engagement rates, ideally over 5%. And there's a bunch of like calculators you can get out there.
Okay.
What you don't want to see is somebody with 100,000 followers and a bunch of videos with like 2,000 and 3,000 views.
Yes.
That's not great,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of easy to spot. And then I would say when it comes to your own content, the inspiring aesthetic sort of core format that we often use, where we're calling out the customer, couples getaway, and we're sort of walking you through the property at the end. Our call to action is like share it with somebody, not book a room, which is very salesy. So you can try to do some of that. Like we see the most success with pretty high caliber cameras and footage when it comes to that. You can do it with an iPhone, but you really need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you can try that format. I think some of the other stuff that you can do as a GM, you can do some more behind the scenes footage. You can do like interview style stuff with guests or staff, things that you don't need quite the same production value because it's not about this like beautiful aesthetic. It's more about like the engagement and sort of the authentic nature of let's say the staff or a guest or a story. So you can lean into that. You got to find the personalities on your staff that show well on camera. Yeah. And it's not always who you would think, right? Sometimes you think somebody's going to be good and they're not. And then somebody that like you would never think would be good on camera, they're kind of ironic on camera, right? Like we have the F&B director at one of our big clients, Alila Morea, outside San Diego. It's a 4-star resort out there. He's phenomenal on camera because you wouldn't expect it. He's kind of soft-spoken, but his delivery is just perfect.
Interesting.
Right? Like we did one of those like Gen Z slang, but told by a boomer, and he just crushed it. Right? It was so good.
It's so cool that there's these ways to just garner attention, and then once you get that attention, being able to channel that attention through. Do you get a lot of people who don't really believe that direct booking is the way forward? And just for context, like for most of these properties that we talk about, whether it's Airbnb or a generic hotel, boutique hotel, it's the majority of their revenue is coming from one OTA or another. Do they really believe, even when they hear what you're doing at 80% direct, that it can also be true for them?
I think a lot of them do, and that's not one that we have. That's not a big hump we have to get over. They're trying to figure out direct bookings, right? Because they're getting banged over the head with these OTA fees, 15 to 30% depending on the OTA.
Yeah.
So they're they get to own the customer relationship. There's all this frustration with OTAs. So I think that there's definitely an openness to it. I think the bigger hurdle with some of them is just like, we're in a new age. Like you need to wake up to that.
Yeah.
And they're not always willing to do that, right? And you always see that in a revolution, in a movement. There's always some folks that are going to be resistant to change. And typically it is the majority that are resistant to change. So our job is to find those that are media forward, that are media first, and like believe in what we're doing and this movement that's happening. So identify those and work with those. So we have to be very selective in terms of the folks that we work with, because you really have to believe and want to go all in on media to want to work with us.
It's expensive and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be for the properties who don't pay attention to social media today? What does their future look like?
I think they're just going to be behind. You can do it now or you can do it later, right? It was same with the internet, same with mobile. Like eventually they will get up to speed. They're just going to be very far behind when they do. So that's what we try to tell people. It's like, hey, you can invest now and probably less.
Yeah.
And you're going to experience this easier growth today because there's fewer folks doing it.
Yeah.
Versus you could wait 10 years and then have a really, really hard time achieving the same results.
That concept of being early and experiencing the arbitrage of a new method, whether it's an advertising or an organic method to go through. I come from the e-com world, and I think back to the days of Facebook ads and Amazon ads back when nobody else was doing them. Like I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't get to Amazon early.
Yeah.
Before it got to the way it is now, where it's hard for everyone to make more money on those channels. You said that Instagram is going to be the main booking platform for hospitality in the next 2 to 3 years. Why do you say that?
So I think it's a better experience for both the host or owner and the guest. So because of that, I just see things shifting in that direction. So for the guest, it's more immersive, right? It's really a sensory experience. You get to envision yourself there much more so than you do with a static photo. You get to understand the story behind the property, not just, again, a static image and description. And it's much easier to share, right? It's much easier to share an Instagram reel than even an Airbnb listing, I think.
Yeah.
It's more sort of built into the ecosystem and into the behavior of the platform. So that's on the guest side. And then on the owner side, I mean, it is, you own the customer journey from beginning to end. You're saving on OTA fees 15 to 30% roughly. Yeah. And we don't offer price discounts on the Book Direct side because we're actually reaching a less price sensitive customer. So if they see us on Instagram, they're emotionally driven, they're inspired, they're not price shopping. It's actually a different part of your brain that you're using when you go to check out the website and book than if you're on an OTA. If you're on Airbnb, you're value shopping, right? You are comparing value of another property versus yours. If somebody sees an Onera treehouse or an Alila guest suite overlooking the ocean on Instagram, they go to the website, and if it costs $500 a night or $725 a night, if they have the means to pay, it doesn't really matter, right? There's nothing they're really comparing it to. So we actually see that our ADRs are higher direct than they are on the OTAs. Total ADR, like including fees. Yeah. And that's because they're less price sensitive. They're booking higher demand days, right? And they're less sort of price shopping.
As time goes on and you're bringing traffic from a reel or from a post right to your website and people are booking on there, like, are you saying that Airbnb might just be on the way down and dying, or are they too big to fail at this point? This is just what the smart companies are doing.
Yeah, I think it's what the smart companies are doing. I don't think Airbnb is going anywhere for decades, probably, as well as the other OTAs. They have a built-in ecosystem. I mean, there are benefits. I mean, certainly from a value shopper standpoint, right? Like the OTAs are going to be your best friend, trying to find a good deal, best value for money, filter for specific amenities. So for like a certain family trip or for maybe some business travel or something like that, there's a value prop there. Yeah. But for inspirational leisure travel, it can't compete with Instagram.
Yeah. Do you think that Instagram is going to be building out like actual booking tools on their platform so you don't have to leave the platform in order to book, and that they would charge a fee for that?
We'll see. I mean, they're already beta testing some of that stuff.
Okay.
Like there's some, you can run ads with a book now, right? You can boost posts with a book now type button, I'm pretty sure. So I do believe something like that is coming. I don't know what they're going to charge.
Yeah.
I have high hopes that it's going to be a lot less than the OTAs.
Sure.
Because they already have the built-in audience on Instagram. So there's less, they don't have to pay as much for the audience as some of these other ones do. They don't have to like run a bunch of ads and paid search and all the things that the OTAs have to do to acquire new customers. They acquire customers because there's entertainment built into the platform and they have this massive base.
Sure.
So they really have to charge you a transaction fee and some margin basically.
Okay.
So it probably will happen, but I don't think it's going to be what the OTA fees are. And just one other thing to touch on, you talked before about, owners that are open to this idea and those that aren't. And I really think that like the organic social media revenue attribution problem, so like that it's hard to attribute direct revenue and that this is kind of new, that people are booking direct through Instagram, is a massive opportunity for those folks that get in early, like you said before with Amazon. So we like to talk to owners about it in that lens, right? It's like, look, the tracking's not perfect. The ROI is not going to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
But if you talk to our clients, you look at our case studies, like you can see the trend line, which for our hotel outside San Diego, I mean, that owner loves us.
Sure.
Right. Their transient bookings are up 40% year over year.
Wow.
And he's like, we didn't change anything else with marketing. The market hasn't materially changed. We can't show that directly in Adobe Analytics, I think is what they use. And there's also a Hyatt barrier as well with them.
Yeah.
They're kind of gatekeeping information. But he's like, we're attributing a lot of that to you guys because it's the only thing that we've changed.
Yeah.
And he knows that we have brought their link taps. So how many people go into the profile and click on the website link to check out their hotel website? We brought that from 500 a month to 5 to 10,000 a month.
Wow.
So we 10 to 20x'd it.
Give me the game plan on this. So you've 40% increased sales year over year working with this individual property. What are you guys doing on that property that a single Airbnb owner could emulate for their property?
Yeah, so I would say it's different. I would have a different strategy as a single Airbnb owner than I would as a Lila Maria beach resort, a multi-$100 million hotel, right? Over $1 million a key on prime Southern California real estate. They have a lot of rooms to sell. So they can pay us $40,000 a month across 4 accounts, spa, restaurant, a dedicated wedding account, the hotel account. Like they can afford to do that and it makes perfect sense to them because we can drive millions in revenue.
Yeah.
You can't quite do that with an individual Airbnb. So my advice to folks that want to lean into this strategy, first of all, you need an Airbnb that's worthy of showing on Instagram. And I'm sorry, but just like cute design is not going to cut it. A pickleball court's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
So the folks that we've seen have massive success on this front are like Devin Lura. So he did Pacific Bin. He had some videos that hit 25, 50 million views. He documented the whole process of building this very elaborate, beautiful container home in the lush forest of the Washington Mountains. Okay. So he documented the whole process. It was kind of a how-to. It was very entertaining. He was very open and transparent with his whole process, with his numbers. And he amassed like 1 million followers or something like that with this one container home.
That's crazy.
He's booked out. He's, almost all direct, right? And now he's got like a Netflix show offer, I think. He's got a bunch of people that want to buy his plans. If he wants to raise money and do multiple units, he can go do that. So I'm sure that like the time, energy, and resources to do all that, I mean, it may or may not have been worth it for that one property.
Yeah.
But when you look at the long tail of effects, investors, selling plans, a Netflix deal, right?
Yeah.
Personal brand opportunities in the future, I think it's very worth it to do that.
That's so interesting. The majority of properties that you would find on a hotel booking site or on Airbnb are not Instagram worthy, are not viral potential in and of themselves. So this is great advice for someone who doesn't have anything today but wants to get into it or is looking to expand their real estate portfolio. Your properties are so unique. You've worked with a lot of properties that are unique. What should they be looking for in order to have something that is predetermined to be viral before they ever pull the trigger on that?
You're saying if you're going to purchase or renovate or build something new?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that gets into a totally different aspect of things, which I think about is like developing. It's really product development, right? It's product development that's going to resonate with the modern traveler. And what we think about on the development side, because I'm a developer, right?
Yeah.
So we developed Onera, these treehouse hotels. We have a couple new projects in development that are pretty exciting. One is in South Florida, and I'm going to describe it to you so you can get a picture, and then I'll kind of back into the why. So this property is in South Florida. It's 45 minutes from Miami. You have this built-in massive demand network. It is, bring Bali, Costa Rica, Tulum, but stateside. So these little bungalows tucked in the jungle. It's on an exotic fruit farm. So you can farm to table some food options, some smoothie. We have a wellness component, maybe even some private wellness amenities at the bungalows. They're all elevated. There's an elevated boardwalk. The units themselves are very unique in a sort of organic shape, floor-to-ceiling glass for great sort of views into nature. Well-designed, of course, interior aesthetic, and complementary experiences, whether that is, make your own smoothie or, make your own, whatever it is, acai bowl. We actually want to lean into a little bit of the families and pets. So we're going to have potentially some daycare options, some 2 bedrooms, right? I mean, I'd love that as a parent. I'm sure you would as well, right? And daycare needs to be good because we've all seen the difference of gyms, for example, that offer daycare where it's a little sketchy, and then Lifetime where we just joined where it's this is amazing.
Oh yeah.
So when you think about all those things, right, you're getting excited, right? I think that the modern traveler gets excited by that, and that's what we're trying to achieve. That when they see it, they're going to get excited, stop scrolling. And when they arrive on property, it's so cool and one of one and unique that they almost can't help themselves but take out their phone and take a photo or take a video. It's sort of this autonomic response, this is dope, I need to document it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're shooting for. And I know it's a high bar for a lot of folks that are looking at homes, sort of more cookie cutter commodity homes. But I think that you can create spaces and areas within homes, within backyards that can still give you that truly wow moment.
Sure. I think you hear a lot of hospitality properties in general. This is more so generic hotels talking about the addition of Instagrammable spaces or a little podcast studio that they're adding in, something that just sets them apart a little bit. But they don't seem to be going all the way in the thought process from the development standpoint of we are designing this to be viral from the very get-go, to emotionally connect with people from the very get-go. And they're kind of doing it after the fact. We have this footprint, let's add a room that makes it Instagrammable.
Yep.
Still, heart's in the right spot, but very different from what you're doing at this point.
Sure. Yeah. And some of it is and I've been there, right? I've been lipstick on a pig, right? Kind of a dumpy apartment and, you kind of put some paint on it and, try to put some nice, whatever, world market anthropology, maybe some West Elm type furniture.
Yeah.
I've been there too. So I do get it. I think for me, and we talked about this a little bit before, what was some of my biggest learnings from being more of a commodity Airbnb operator as I've kind of transitioned to building Onera, creating a product that the modern traveler loves and has virality potential, to now having this social media marketing agency and revenue management company, Owasi. So one of the things I've learned is to not skimp. Plain and simple, right? So don't try to cheap out on something because so much of the value is often in that last 5, 10, 20% of spend that's going to make you such an outlier compared to everybody else stand out.
In hospitality, if you look at any of the top 10 trends that people put out at the beginning of the year, I've read them for the last 3 years, and this year was no different. One that was on every single list was personalization of the guest stay. What do you think about that?
So you're speaking to... Yeah, the personalized hospitality, maybe leveraging AI, those sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that is important and a growing trend. We've talked about things like, can we get some of the guest information, maybe answer a few questions, and then actually write them a story?
Yeah.
Which I thought would
Okay.
be really cool. It just gets printed out and they check that out. The one issue we've run into is it still requires quite a bit of customer feedback
Yeah.
and them answering questions for you. I think there's big brands out there that do what you're talking about pretty well already. Like if you look at Four Seasons is a great example, right?
Yeah.
Like they know what you want before you arrive.
Yeah.
And then whenever you come back, they know what you want. Your drink, whether or not you want daily cleaning, all that sort of stuff, they're already going to know. And so I think that it's easier to achieve with a higher repeat guest rate and things like that.
Sure.
So I don't know if I have a ton for you there. I'm sure there's going to be increasing opportunities, but the roadblock today is what data are you giving me?
Yeah. Yeah. And as that increases in the future, because the world is ever more connected, ever more data being tracked on people coming through, to the point that maybe you've never been to a Hyatt before, but Four Seasons has your information and like that's being shared somehow to make sure that you get a personalized experience over here on this end. I love where the world is going with that. All your properties being so carefully cultivated and have this viral potential. I'm just kind of curious where your mindset was at on adding in that like personalization because of AI and how things are changing so swiftly in the industry too. So
yeah, I also think that like we're trying. I think you can get with some of these properties. You don't want to be everything to all people.
Yeah.
Right. You want to sort of. They say the riches are in the niches. Right. Like I think you want to be a specific thing and really lean into that thing.
Sure.
And so people are looking for that experience when they're coming. So I think that's important, and folks have had a lot of success with that. So that's more of what I've tried to do with my properties.
Yeah. Do you see people knocking off your properties now that you've been established for a couple of years in this, not a couple, but more than 5 years established in this idea of building these really unique, I'll call them tree houses, but like these unique landscape hotels, as you would say. Are you getting knocked off on that?
Plenty of copycats. Yes, for sure. Look, I think that back to the skimping thing though, right? I think that a lot of folks, like take Fredericksburg, for example, there's a bunch of copycats, but we've been able to maintain our rate, largely maintain our occupancy, even as like the broader market has softened post-COVID.
Yeah.
We're down a little bit, but way less than our competitors. And I think that's because we're still best in class. And we're adding super cool new unit types, right? I've been posting about this on LinkedIn recently. We have a whole expansion coming this summer where we're introducing 8 entirely new unit types, some of which are going to be the coolest units you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And some of those units cost $650,000 a key, right? And that's okay because we think we're going to get $700, $800, $1,000 a night.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the copycats out there are skimping out, trying to do things on the cheap. They kind of choking on the price per key that we're paying, but we're producing a product that people love and has more longevity. So I think that's where a lot of folks get caught up. And they might say like, oh, resources, we don't have the same resources. I've raised some money, like maybe there's more capital at play. And that's true to some extent. I think that's a barrier to entry, right?
Yes.
That's a competitive advantage we have. Like we do have the capital to spend, $500,000, $600,000 per key in some cases.
Yeah.
But we don't do that all the time, right? We pick our spots. Like we might do a few units that are of the higher end of price per key that's going to drive interest in traffic to the whole site.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing I think you can do as a smaller operator, just do fewer units better. Right. So instead, and it's easier to operate. Right, you're going to have higher margins, your ADR is way higher, cleaning, supplies, other costs are going to be a smaller percentage of your overall operation. It's easier to manage. So instead of doing 5 or 10, maybe just do 1 or 2, like Devin Lurup.
Yeah. You see people hopping into your industry, and I'm sure most of them not taking the same steps that you did, and you see a lot of the failures that are happening. What are the red flags that you see when I come to you and I say, hey, thinking about getting into lifestyle hospitality, what should I be watching out for?
I mean, it goes back to I'm watching out for somebody that's overly cost conscious, because then my question is going to be, well, how are you going to stand out? If everything's a cost and you don't look at some things as an investment in value and virality and sort of guest experience, then how are you going to differentiate yourself?
Yeah.
I think that some folks can get really hung up on specific comps. So is there a comp set for me to look at? And oftentimes when there's a robust comp set, you're too late. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
that's part of the issue, I think. So with Fredericksburg, you want some signal, right? You don't want to just say, "Oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
build." And by the way, if you do 1 or 2 units and they're really badass, as long as you're within 2 or 3 hours from some major city, like you're probably going to do well.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do 5, 10, 20 units, you want some signal that market is going to attract a traveler that's willing to pay what you need them to pay to make your numbers work. So with Fredericksburg, we had, I was using AirDNA. I was still into Airbnb at the time.
Okay.
So we were using AirDNA, and I was trying to find unique stay style units, something that was a little more unique than just your standard sort of cottage or cabin out there. And I was trying to find units that were outperforming, that were a little bit more unique. And I found some, call it a handful, half a dozen that were. The revenue per square foot was off the charts. Like it was a small, maybe unique cabin. Maybe they called it a tree house. It was kind of like connected to a tree, but had a cool interior, some cool cozy nooks and hammocks. And that property's doing $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year for a couple's cabin. Whereas a run-of-the-mill cottage is doing like 30, 40. So when I saw that signal, I'm like, okay, do I think I can create something even nicer and better than these kind of unique-ish cabin treehouse-like things? And I was like, yeah, I think I can do something cooler than that. So if I can beat 100, 120K a year on a 2-bedroom cabin, I can afford to spend to make something really amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned one of your competitive advantages is access to capital. There's where you are today with the real estate fund, having sold off some properties to a publicly traded REIT. Let's go back to the inception in your mind of using other people's money for real estate investing. Because I think you mentioned build 2 properties, see how it goes, and then go build the rest. Have some type of a sense of where things are going. I'm really curious about your initial investors and what information you brought to them to say, look at this opportunity, and the experience that you were showcasing to them. You can trust me with your money to go and get you these outsized returns over here. Take me back to your first investor conversation and what that looked like and what it sounded like.
So interestingly enough, I think my first equity raise was probably one of the easiest ones I have done and will do, which is very counterintuitive and won't be the case for most people. Part of it was time and place, but a big piece of it was I had made these people money. They were management clients of my short-term rental management company, almost all of them, friends and family or clients. And so there's no one easier to ask for an investment from than somebody you've already made money.
Yeah.
Right? So I made the money on the management side. I was like, hey, I have this new idea. They trusted me. They believed in me as an operator, right? They believed that I wasn't going to light their money on fire, right? And I had made them money. So they were like, yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't have to show them a whole lot, sort of a rough model, financial model that I put together, sort of a design deck with mood board images. We were working with an architect and designer at the time that gave us some of the initial designs that were pretty pictures, right? Kind of inspiring. And when they see this, they're like, this is unique. Maybe this has legs. It's kind of a cool project to be a part of.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was during COVID when money was like free.
Yeah. Yeah.
We went through this whole period where like rates were effectively zero.
Yeah.
So everybody's looking for yield wherever they can get it. Now we have the opposite problem, right? Where you can basically earn on almost risk-free dollars, high single-digit returns, which most of us haven't seen in many decades.
Sure.
Right. But during COVID, it was like, you can't almost earn no return on risk-free dollars. So everybody's looking for where can I find return? So real estate was booming, Airbnbs were booming, and it was easy to raise equity. The place where I had some challenges early on was actually on the debt side.
Okay.
So I went to like 20 different banks, and banks are more conservative. They like stuff right down the fairway, right? And so they looked at what I was doing and like they thought it was cool, but they're like, is this a hotel? Is this residential? Like they don't know what bucket to put it in, and it really needs to get put into a bucket for them. But that came down to persistence, right?
Did you end up it sounds like you're talking about more of a private equity company than just this traditional what a bank would expect for a real estate investment, like commercial property or something along those lines. Is that why you ran into those issues on the bank side? We had to find one that was more private equity focused?
I mean, I don't know that I wouldn't say private equity necessarily. I think the challenge was, first of all, it's ground up hospitality. during COVID.
Yeah.
Right. So by nature, risky. We're not buying a pre-existing asset. There's not existing cash flow. I mean, frankly, it's just hard debt to get, proven operator or not. And I wasn't a proven operator as a developer at that time. So I had to find a local community bank that was willing to take like a leap of faith on me and the project, that liked the market, liked the concept, wanted to be associated with it. And you can find that in a local community bank like Chase, Wells Fargo. They're not going to touch you.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. But a local bank, a regional bank will say, okay, maybe you got referred to them. There's some level of trust. They like your concept. They like the market. They want to be the bank that's associated with the project.
Okay.
And all you need is one loan officer who is going to go to bat for you and loan committee and underwriting, right? And that's what we ended up having. And that loan officer actually introduced me to my GC that is like much more than a GC. He's really like our co-developer at this point, and partner in future projects. And so if a banker introduces you to a construction guy, a GC, then that's probably a good one that you want to hold on to because they probably came in on time, on budget. They had a successful project, right? But yeah, to answer, just going back to your question, I think it was more ground up hospitality during COVID, unproven development. It's just hard, right? It just took a lot of no's to get a yes. Over 20 no's to get a yes.
Yeah. Let's not breeze past the fact that you mentioned 20, 30 banks. And the persistence that it takes to go through that many no's to get to a yes. Because I think about the mindset of a lot of people, I think, that are in this audience. So they've got the day job today. And we'll dig into the fact that you did a lot of stuff while you still had a day job too. But they've got a day job today and they don't really want to take that leap for one reason or another. And it's like, okay, someone's going to tell you no, and that's okay. You can go to the next person and the next person, but you went through 20 no's to get to a yes. Is it because you already had money raised that you needed to do a project with and get that money, that capital deployed? Or is that just innate in your nature, being a former sales guy and it's just like, I don't mind getting told no?
I think it's innate in my nature for sure. You can always give money back. I've had scenarios where I've had to do that, right? Like, hey, due diligence didn't make sense. And investors will respect that, right? If you're like, hey, this doesn't make sense now for whatever reason, giving you your money back, people are okay with that and they trust that. It's more so I have an insane sense of urgency, I would say, and certainly a lot of drive and persistence. And with the banks, I needed one. I needed one to say yes. I mean, it's different than sales. Like you need more than one to have a job, right? With a bank, I just need one. So that definitely kept me going. I had a strong passion and sort of, persistence to make this happen. I was okay getting the door slammed in my face a bunch of times. Usually people are actually pretty nice about saying no. It's not as bad as you make it out to be. You learn something from every no, right? I mean, my pitch probably got way better between the 5th and 20th no.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because I learned what they're thinking about. I'm like, oh, okay, this needs to fall into a bucket. What bucket is it going to be? I'm going to tell them the bucket so they don't have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I learned about all this stuff along the way, and goes back to, I did not have a lot of knowledge about getting construction loans or construction in general or building hotels or any of this stuff. And I learned a lot of it trial by fire.
Yeah.
Right. I would learn kind of on the go. And that worked for me. In some ways, I learned better that way personally.
Yeah.
And you got to make some mistakes along the way. But I do find that I learn the best when I made the mistake. And I won't make the mistake again versus just like, seeing it on a YouTube video or something like that. I can learn some things that way, but it really sticks when it's my mistake.
Well, I think so many business owners and really entrepreneurs, it's about jumping into the ditch and then learning. They're very trigger happy. Mm-hmm. And you see that it's maybe a little bit less of apprehensiveness of thinking about what might go wrong and more of like, well, I'm going to figure it out. Let me just hop in and there's something to this because on the stock side of the house and retail investors, I find that the same people who are more like, I know nothing about the company, I'm going to buy the stock and then I'm going to get smart about it. Now, is that wise to do? No, but it's the same concept of people who are willing to take a leap. Because if you have a chance to overthink it and think through all the stuff that you know now, it's a lot more of a big decision to start if you know all the stuff you have to go through. Do you agree with that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think it's much easier to talk yourself out of a deal. right, than talk yourself into a deal in a lot of cases. My co-founder at Awasi, he says often, okay, you stay a pessimist and be poor. I'll be an optimist and get rich. Right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, that's kind of how it is, right? It's like, you can poo-poo things, you can be a pessimist, but the opportunity lies in taking that leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
In being a little bit optimistic. And you need to be realistic, and you need to be and you need to have grit. You need to be problem-solving oriented. You're going to get curveballs thrown your way, and it's your ability to navigate those, and in some cases turn lemonade out of lemons, right? That allows people to be successful on the entrepreneurial side. But I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be optimistic.
Yes.
It's too hard. And there's too many barriers and challenges along the way. Like if you're not optimistic, you're not going to make it.
I couldn't agree more, because I've seen a lot of business owners who are pessimists, but I would describe them as people who own their job, not so much entrepreneurs who are creating environments for other people to be successful inside and are scaling to places, because you just can't be so concerned about the things that could possibly go wrong. A lot of things can go wrong. Most businesses fail.
Yeah.
Like you start off like 95% failure rate, and then you work your way up from there more often than not to like the pit of despair where this is probably going to fail, and you kind of work your way out of it,
Yeah. Going back to your question too, like how do you take the leap of faith from your job? I like to play a little game with people when they have this issue. And it is, what's the worst that's going to happen? Okay. So you quit your job, you go try and start something, falls completely on its face.
Yeah.
You fail. What are you going to do next? You're going to go get another job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like the downside is, okay, maybe you missed a couple years, right, of promotions, right? But you gained a ton of experience that may make you a more valuable hire for the next role. So I just think that people, and it goes back to the optimistic, pessimistic thing. Jeff Bezos says this all the time. People overestimate the impact of risk, right? So they overestimate the downside and they underestimate the upside.
Yeah. I like that. I also think that for that person who's worried about quitting their job, that has the option to go get that job again, right? Because in many cases, if you have what it takes to go out and try and fail in entrepreneurship, you probably come back a better employee, or you were one of the good ones to begin with. So they want to get you back. So you're going to have that job available. I also noticed that people who go out and fail, and it's like been 18 months, their backup plan stops being go get a job. And it's just, I figured out that I can put in half the effort I was putting in there and do just fine without the corporate overhead on top of me.
And that's like a good scenario, which often does happen. And often you do fail your first time, right?
Yeah.
But, you didn't lose your what on it, right? Like you did okay, you got out, you're maybe on to the next thing. Maybe that opportunity showed you a new opportunity.
Yeah.
I've been involved in that. I mean, that basically what happened with Onera. I had a commodity short-term rental business. COVID hit. And urban short-term rentals were not a thing for a couple months.
Yeah.
And I got pushed into treehouse hotels, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that if you're an entrepreneur, there's a good chance you're going to fail your first time. It's about the journey. And like when you're in it, it's so hard to like listen to that and hear that because I've been there too, where it's like, I don't feel like I have my big idea, but through your experience, oftentimes that idea will come and you will find your passion and you will find that thing that you were uniquely positioned to do based on those experiences that you had.
Yeah.
So that's like a good case scenario for an entrepreneur, somebody who is entrepreneurial and going to succeed that way. But for somebody who wants to try and maybe doesn't end up, being successful or not successful fast enough for their liking, they can always go and get a job again.
Yeah, it's true. It's out there.
Yeah.
You bring up your short-term rental management company.
Mm-hmm.
If we can dig into that for a couple of minutes, because I think one of the most interesting things about your story is when you decided to quit your job and go all in with that and the massive growth that you saw in that management company. Can you get in the mindset of someone today in 2025 who is running a property management company? They've got 10 doors under management, and they want to grow to 100, 200. You went from 8 to 200 in 18 months. Let's tell your story in the mindset of this person who wants to do it today in 2025 to increase the assets under management for them, of how you went from 8 to 200. That's a big jump in 18 months. How did you do it?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different things to break down there. one is I think you got to treat your clients right, make them money. We're back to that, and they will give you more properties, right? If you're working with somebody, helping them find lease arbitrage apartments, or maybe they give you a house that they own to manage, and they do well with you, you make them money, they're going to give you more.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's just kind of how it works. And sometimes quite quickly. Like if they're seeing positive returns in 3 to 6 months, they're going to give you the keys to the castle to maybe their whole portfolio.
Yeah.
And you see that quite a bit. Finding big clients certainly helps, right? If I can find somebody with like 30 homes or 30 properties, taking that all in one slug certainly helps grow the business faster.
Yeah.
So I did find that like if I was leveling up in terms of the clients that I had, and there were aspects of what I was doing that was better than that they were doing significantly. So like investing in IP, really trying to hone my product as a management company allowed me to maybe take on like subcontract with another management company. Like there's another management company out there, they're charging whatever, 25%. I can do 70% of what they do for 15%. And they can scoop a bunch of margin. And we were able to do that because our company was so highly leveraged. I got into the outsourcing game super early.
Okay.
And some of this was like skimping hustler behavior, which I had to evolve out of. But it was good for my first venture, like limited cash. Like it taught me a lot.
What does that look like when you talk about the skimping hustler? Like I'm very curious about.
I mean, you could like, I think we had 2 onshore employees, like me and a remote manager in Southern California.
Yeah.
Everyone else was a contractor that was local to the properties. So cleaning companies, maintenance companies, like we would identify a good partner in the market, which I think is another good way to scale fast.
Sure.
Identify a good partner. You know, if you're limited with your cash resources, identify vendors. So you're not paying for FTEs, right? You're not paying overhead. So we did that, and it allowed us to scale what we called micro scaling. So we could get like 5 properties in a market, and it would make sense to go into that market because we didn't have to hire full-time employees.
Sure.
We could just rely on a really good cleaning company, maintenance company. But almost our entire staff was overseas at that first company. We had 20 people in the Philippines at our height, and 2 local employees.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were handling guest communications. I was running revenue management, and they were sort of executing the pricing strategy. I would get reports from them. They're running like some of the managerial accounting, like owner statements, things like that.
Yeah.
So it was just trying to figure out what can I offshore? What can I, and I also found out kind of early, like treat them well.
Yes.
Right. There's a lot of folks out there that I think take advantage of the offshore thing. And if you treat them well, you stand out. All their friends want to come work for you. You can sort of get the pick of the best talent. Now, I do think that's changed a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, we were outsourcing to the Philippines in like 2016, 2017.
Early.
Yeah. And I was even doing outsourcing before that. I got into it when I was actually at McKinsey, consulting firm right out of college. And I had a VA when I had my sales job.
No way.
In Armenia. He's like a PhD in econ.
You hired him, or the company had enough?
First, I hired him.
Okay.
I showed them the value, and then I was like, I need budget for this.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
I love that.
I took a little bit of a leap of faith. And I did a lot of that at that company I was at, Quid, where I would sort of do entrepreneurial endeavors like within.
Yes.
And sort of, you know, see that through.
That's so funny because when I was in sales in 2018, 2019, I was the first person at that company, the short time I was there, to bring in an offshore person in India to support it. It's just like, it's not worth my time to go and do this. And think about how much scale. If one person's just doing lead development and I can talk to only interested people in the service, I can just be a closer basically, you know? But I think you were way further ahead of that, 2015 and on. What I know about hiring offshore, and I've hired 30, 40 people in the Philippines, India, South America, you breeze past the fact that to do that, you have to build out some pretty robust systems and SOPs to get that team moving in one direction. Who did that and when?
I've always surrounded myself with pretty good process people. I'm a pretty organized thinker. So I actually think that in some ways I need less process than other folks need at some points. Like I do a lot in WhatsApp and Apple Notes.
Love it.
You know, I think that there's a really funny meme that it shows a bell curve, and it's like a caveman on one side with like Apple Notes and WhatsApp, and like a sensei on the other side with the same thing, Apple Notes and WhatsApp. And in the middle, there's this guy like pulling his hair out with like Notion and, whatever, Trello, like all these other efficiency and productivity tools. And I use some of that stuff. I use Asana.
Sure.
I use Superhuman Email Client, but I'm pretty light in terms of my personal tech stack.
Okay.
But I've always surrounded myself with people who are good at building out processes. So with that Philippines team, probably my best hire was one of my first hires. And she helped build out the whole team. I tried to treat her like gold, consistently was giving her raises and, whenever she wanted time off, like whatever she needed, I was there and there to support her. I think that's something else that I've always tried to embody is I have a high sense of urgency, and I feel like it's only right to treat my employees' needs with the same sense of urgency.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks for something and like comes to me with something, I try to get right back to them. Right. I'm not going to wait, hours or, and God forbid, days. And I know people that do that. And it's like, it just instills a culture that like, I don't respect their time. I don't respect what they need. I think about it as this idea of like service-oriented leadership. Like I need to empower them and give them what they need to be successful and to push the ball forward. Yeah. So I felt like I embodied that with that employee in the Philippines who was basically our manager. And she helped, her and one other manager basically built out all the processes for the rest of the team.
That's crazy. Do you think you got lucky to find her so early on? Or was that a skill move to put her in position and then build a whole team off from there?
It was about being early.
Yeah.
I was early, so I had pick of the litter on at that time on Upwork.
Yeah.
Like you could hire a rock star for like $6 an hour.
Yeah.
And I'd pay them 7 or 8, right? So they'd never leave.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the difference, right? I was early. And I was willing to try it. I was willing to test it. And so it was maybe a little bit of luck, but it was also just the fact that I was so ahead of the game that I had the sort of pick of the litter when it came to talent over there. Today, it's so much more competitive.
Yeah.
It's so much harder for us to hire over there today than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. I've noticed the same thing because in today's day and age, you have a couple dynamics that have played out. Number one, you did all the training for them. Now there's the commoditized knowledge stack that other people want access to, and they're willing to pay them more.
Yep.
It's closer and closer to American wages. But I think that there's an issue right now with overseas workers because you have this separation where you see people working 3 and 4 jobs, kind of like people did here in COVID, had 3 W-2s until they got caught with it.
We've seen that.
It's like, I'll tell you my philosophy on it and see where you're at with it. My philosophy is let's hire for an end state and not by the hour. And here's a weekly rate to do this job. If they're doing this job, fantastic. I could care less if they have 4 other jobs on the other side of it because I don't want to manage people's time like that. You kind of fall in the same boat on that?
We're a little different.
Okay.
I do like dedicated full-time employees. We've tried to work with folks that were doing multiple things and it's been a challenge. Like we're trying to go after like big vision stuff.
Yeah.
And typically you need people that are all in to do that. And so, I mean, we take probably a little bit of the approach of like, we're going to give you enough work that you could only do it if you were full-time.
Love it.
Right. Or if you have, if you've mastered some, like you have other offshore people and they're doing a bunch of the work for you, like, okay. I mean, if the output's good, we're okay with that. Whatever.
Yeah.
The productivity is still there. But yeah, like we've been out offshoring for long enough. We have a pretty good sense for how long things should take. And if it's taking you a lot longer, then like you're just not cutting it anyway, right? So either it's a capability thing or it's a distraction thing. And either way, it's just not going to work. And so we've had to be I've had to become much more vigilant about only hiring and keeping A players. And it's a constant battle. Like even today, right? It's you have a need. There's such a knee-jerk instinct to like, oh, we got to fill it. After you've been looking for like a month, you're just like, oh, we got to fill this.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to not do that. But I have found that waiting longer, even if you're stretching your existing core team a bit more, they're happy to work a little harder if everybody around them is a amazing producer and an A player. Once you introduce a B or a C player, everybody gets demotivated because you got to pick up their slack. It opens up the lanes for other B and C players to come in. So that's been one of my learnings as well that I've tried to really embody with my new company, Owasi, is like really only hiring top talent and keeping top talent. We've had to let go of people on day one because they interviewed great. And we find this a lot. You find people that interview really well and sound really great, and then they don't end up anywhere near meeting your expectations, right? They were just a good interviewer.
Yeah.
And maybe the attitude's not there. Maybe they just don't really like to work hard. They're just kind of they're good at sales, selling themselves, but they're not in a sales role. So we've dealt with that a lot and kind of just have to rip the Band-Aid off and move on. But hiring is hard.
Yeah. How do you screen for that A talent, especially on day one? They come into work and you're looking for things like attitude and work ethic and not just that salesmanship. What are you looking for with your team today to ensure that they truly are A players?
So for most roles, we really have to watch out for somebody that it's all about them, right? Maybe an individual contributor sales role, like that can work.
Sure.
But for most roles, and we've had to deal with that before, like somebody interviewed great, they sounded flexible, and then on day one, they're like dictating their hours.
Yeah.
And we're like, that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So, and there's more and more of that today, right? I mean, especially American workers, right? Like there's a lot more entitlement. And so it's actually not that hard to spot. I think it's harder to make the tough decision to say, oh, we just spent a month trying to hire for this position, 4 interviews with this person, and now we have to let them go a week in.
Yeah.
Or worse, a month or 2 in when you've trained them.
Yeah.
So it's more about that discipline. And I still struggle with this. I think most people do, of ripping the Band-Aid off.
Sure.
And moving on.
You think it's because the investment's been made into that person?
Oh yeah, sunk costs.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, you've trained them, and the pain avoidance of I got to go hire again for this, I got to go through this all over again. I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah. I've even seen with team members where it's almost that it's okay to do the work a second time to hire another person, but it's the person that hired them admitting, like, I was wrong about this person. Because you get someone who wants to fight and say, like, oh no, they're going to come around, like taking a little bit longer than everybody else did. But you say to them, they are not an A player if they need more time to come around, right?
To be honest, man, when you have mostly A players all around, they'll tell you. They will tell you, right? Yeah. And like, maybe they won't come out and say it, but you ask them, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
And it's more, I mean, on the guest comm side of things, I feel like our manager over there has extremely high standards. And she's going to, more often than not, we have somebody that goes through, we think they're going to be good. And during training with her, she's like, this is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And that's when you find out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's your employees, your team holding future hires accountable and keeping that standard up there. And that's part of the culture that you instill.
Yeah. What do you say to that rental manager here in the States that has 10 properties that wants to grow? Is offshore talent still a viable option for them in order to get to 100 properties, 200 properties?
I mean, I think you have to, right? I mean, there's no way you can compete with American wages. I would start looking at new markets, right? I mean, we still do well in the Philippines. I know the market well, but I've heard people doing well in like Colombia and Belize, so, in Pakistan, right? Like, so I think you want to start looking at other markets that aren't as mature and established, and maybe there's a little bit less competition. Upwork, is pretty saturated. You're going to want to try and find Facebook groups and other ways to find people.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to get creative, but I think you have to leverage overseas talent to stay competitive. And the other big one is AI, right? How can you leverage AI? How can you automate to make your team that much more efficient?
Yeah. How do you see AI over the next couple of years affecting your specific niche industry of hospitality?
Well, so I can tell you probably even more so. I think about it more so on the Awasi side of things when it comes to social media marketing and content, maybe to some extent revenue management. So, I mean, AI video is pretty incredible. It's not quite where we need it to be to be able to basically produce reels that we want and just post them without actually going to the property. That would be amazing.
You think we're getting close on that though?
I can't imagine it's going to be over a year that we can do that, right? Which is crazy with just the pace of innovation and improvement. Like every Sora model and like the Google AI video, like every model that comes out is so much better. Yeah. And there's less of like, oh, they look weird when they walk and move their hands. Like that's gone now. Yeah. That was like a thing a month or 2 ago. Right?
No more 8 fingers on one hand.
Yeah, but like that was a thing like 2 months ago, right? Yeah. I mean, just the speed of quality improvement is remarkable. So that is something we're keeping a close eye on. We're already heavily using AI for a lot of certain like research, getting up to speed on things, how a lot of people are using it now, but also for a lot of content writing, whether that's script writing for social media, whether it's, written form or script writing for video.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of that, obviously idea generation, things like that. So yeah, we use quite a bit of ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and all the things.
Well, it's funny how far those platforms have come just in the last 6 months. It used to be 6 months ago if you didn't have AI plus human on top of it. But now with the right prompt, like you can get yourself 95% of the way there. I haven't seen 100% when it comes to like real script creation just yet, but it's getting so much better. And I'm sure you've seen that on your side too.
Yeah, totally. You still need some human intervention typically to get to make some of the final tweaks that give you real virality and very high engagement potential, but it can get you quite a bit of the way there. We think it's probably closer with most things to like 60 to 80% of the way there.
Okay.
Not even 95.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get there soon though.
I think about AI and I think, wow, it's like 2 years and 5 months since I first heard about ChatGPT and how limited it was back then, although it seemed like it was the world. And now where it's at and how fast things are accelerating and being commoditized, it makes me wonder about these viral posts that are coming out when the AI figures that piece out where you've almost fully automated your process, but that does in some way sense the beginning of the end of your advantage on viral videos. And that could be short-lived in 1 or 2 years at that point as you get mass adoption of tools like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that we are not super concerned about that because of A, the speed of adoption, and B, we're so far ahead of the curve. So we just have to be phenomenal at leveraging those tools.
Yeah.
Right. If we can leverage those tools, I mean, most of these, and our ideal customer profile is like a multi-million-dollar a year hotel.
Yeah.
It's not a single Airbnb. Like typically they cannot afford what we're providing and we can't generate enough value for it to make sense.
Yeah.
So that hotel owner that's 3, 4, 5, 10 million a year in revenue, they don't necessarily want to do the marketing and the content and all that side of things themselves.
Yeah.
Even to the extent of prompting and figuring out, the mechanics of how to like auto post, and they don't necessarily want to get into all those weeds. So I think that if we can harness the power of AI to make our business that much more scalable, that much more cost effective, then we can pass a lot of that benefit on to owners and it just starts to become a no-brainer.
Yeah. I think it still comes down to that unique property at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I'll throw you a hard one here because let's say that you are a standard 3-star hotel, nothing special about it, Holiday Inn, motel, and below. What should they be doing on social media? They don't have a way to say, hey, look at our treehouse. Like this is the platform that they're in. Yeah.
So I think of like 3 different ways you could go. So one way is nothing. I mean, your property just isn't really made for social. You're going to compete on OTAs. You have a brand that is it has a big loyalty network that's going to funnel you people. So you could just and by the way, the Holiday Inn I don't think the majority of their business is like leisure travel. And if it is, it's very much budget leisure travel, which is not what plays the best on social. It's typically like inspiring stays, a little more upscale type travel destinations. But there are a couple ways that you could go. So one would be you really invest heavily in it. You try a bunch of different content styles. You do behind the scenes. You do stop people on the street interview style. You do, you do a bunch of like Q&A with your corporate planners and sort of create these like fun, entertaining, maybe even humorous videos. You could poke fun at yourself like Ryanair does, right? And I think you can get a lot of engagement and virality from poking fun at yourself too. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can go, but you need a hook.
Yeah.
You need a personality on site that's really engaging. You need some humor angle that's going to pop. You need something that's gonna hook. Just your run of the mill Holiday Inn kind of not very engaging staff member. I mean that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. But the properties that you're working with are not these like 3-star, fixed footprint. You're working with a lot of like these more so the landscape type hotels, experience driven. any like normal looking boutique hotels? Like walk me through kind of your buy box, if you will,
Yeah.
for who you work with at OASI.
Yeah, so the Hotel Alila Maria Beach, that's like a typical 4-star, 130-room hotel. I mean, it's a Hyatt Boundless Collection property. It's on a beautiful piece of property overlooking the Pacific Ocean, but it's a hotel. It's not a tree house, right? So we have definitely seen success there. And from that success, we've actually signed on another 5 to 6 more traditional hotels. Still cool, but not Onera, right?
Sure.
Not super unique. And so we are seeing success there. So our buy box, I would say, our ICP is going to be $2 million a year up in revenue, typically, and lifestyle, boutique, luxury.
Sure.
Or like upscale.
Okay.
Like it's got to be one or multiple of those buckets, oftentimes independent hotels or one of these like collections, like Marriott design hotels or small luxury hotels or something like that that has a little bit more what feels like authenticity. There's more of a story you can go after, a little more uniqueness.
Yeah. And as far as the chains go, it's just kind of those offshoots that they have. Like there's not much that you could personally do with, Marriott properties by and large.
I mean, I think that there are, if they had the right budget they wanted to throw at it, I think at a Marriott or a JW or something like that, you could do what I was describing around like more team-focused content, like the staff.
Okay.
I think you can do content around, let's say, weddings or corporate planners, people that work with the hotel, like Q&A type stuff. But there's a lot more scripting, storytelling, production that has to go into that. Like our content format that has worked at Onera and those type of properties, this like inspiring, highly aesthetic, really high quality video footage, hero shots, that's definitely not going to do as well at a more traditional Marriott or JW. But I do think there are things that you can do that work.
Well, with the property that you're putting up in Florida right now.
Yeah.
And then the expansion that you're doing in Fredericksburg, how much time do you spend on site as those are being developed? I've seen you in the hard hat, so I'm thinking, okay, was that a photo op or are you living down Elon Musking it?
Well, Elon Musking it maybe in some ways, right? Like how Elon runs things, which I love, is if there's a problem, I'm there.
Yeah.
And let me help you solve the problem if I'm the guy to solve the problem. And right, like he is a lot of times, right? Like he's so technical and on the engineering side. When it comes to construction and means and methods and structural engineering, stuff like that, I'm not an expert. So I'm typically not the guy. But if there's a problem that I can help solve, I'm there.
Yeah.
So I would say, I typically am on site one of the sites once a week. So it's not every day, right? I'm running OASI.
Sure.
I have a couple of different development projects going on, which is why it's amazing I have this GC co-developer partner that I mentioned, because he is just phenomenal, boots on the ground, running the team, very deep expertise in construction and development. So Florida, I'm there. I expect to be there once or twice a month, probably more like twice, but for shorter trips.
Okay.
Yeah.
It actually brings up a really interesting point because you get some varying advice that people give about how to win the first time. And someone casually looks at someone like you, they're in their 9 to 5, they want to quit, and they're like, well, Ben's doing like 8 different things. He's got the social media management company, he's got the REIT, he's got his fund, he has all. But what do you say to that person about how you made it here to be able to focus on multiple things?
Yeah, I was not doing that early on, right? First it was the short-term rental management company. I was all in on that. There was a period where I had my sales job and was kind of moonlighting, getting that going.
Yeah.
But once it became clear that I was making more money doing less work with the vacation rentals and potentially management, the decision became obvious to leave and do that. So I did that, was all in on that. COVID hit and really kind of forced a pivot. I was interested in this more outdoor experiential hospitality, but I probably wouldn't have gotten the kick in the butt to pursue it if my revenue didn't evaporate from the urban short-term rental business.
Sure.
So that kind of pushed me there. Then I was all in on that. I had a trailer on site. I was, living out there a few days a week. I was running the construction, which I wouldn't do again. Okay. But it was a great learning experience. I do feel like it's much easier and often better to do it yourself and then hire yourself out of it because you learn it. Even if you don't do it great, like me with Instagram, I was not amazing initially, but I learned something by going through that process. And so I was able to hire and identify like good and bad because I had done it myself. So it does become challenging, becomes more challenging for me, right? As I've scaled, multiple opportunities going on, there's less opportunity for me to have done it myself.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's challenging to get up to speed and have enough knowledge to know to ask the right questions and have the right expertise. So yeah, that's a challenge. And sometimes I have to be like, all right, I have to get more up to speed on this thing. I don't get it well enough. ChatGPT, YouTube University, right? Like I have to learn more about this because it's part of my business and I don't understand it well enough yet.
Do you ever feel like you're doing too much compared to when you were just doing one thing and hyper-focused on that one thing?
I do think everything that I'm doing now is very related and synergistic and kind of builds on itself. Like there's nothing that's like totally off topic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we have this services company that powers the landscape hotels that I build.
Yeah.
Right. So there's definitely some synergy there. All the personal brand stuff I do feeds both of those things, right? Let's say investment on the landscape hotel side, clients on the Awasi marketing and revenue management side. So yeah, it's all related.
Yeah.
So I would say no. I mean, I like being involved in multiple things. I think that the biggest thing that you have to do if you want to do a lot, let's say after you've done a couple things and just fully focused on those and you want to kind of run multiple companies at once or go after multiple opportunities, you need phenomenal partners, like co-founders, right? And amazing hires too. So that's the only way that I've been able to do it.
Sure.
You know, we have that phenomenal GC and co-developer on the development side. I would not still be in development if it wasn't for him. Right? Like just because it's too hard and too much work, there's no way that, and development for all of you out there who want to get into development, it's a long game, right? You're not seeing $1 for years. It's not the quick Airbnb play, but there's sustainable value creation. You can make multi-millions. You can build a personal brand. You can make yourself bankable, right? All of those things, but it takes time.
Yeah.
And then on the services side of the business, I partnered up with this guy that I used to work for that I think we talked about actually fired me when I was partying a little too hard and before I got sober. He's like, you got a lot of potential, but you're out of this org for now. Like you're not with it yet. So he fired me. Later, we ended up reconnecting, always stayed in touch. And when he saw what I had built at Onera, he's like, this is something special. And we ended up partnering up to build the services company around these sort of properties built for the modern traveler.
Yeah.
So, and social media marketing came after. Initially, it was property management, revenue management, and he really stood up a lot of that social media marketing arm for the hotels. He pushed me into doing the personal brand stuff that I do now. He's like, this is the future, founder-led. You got to get out there, and it's been a game changer for us. Takes up a lot of my time now, but it's very valuable.
You've got this mentor / business partner who fired you, a decade ago?
About, yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about that wake-up call, because this guy is still active in your life today and now in a business partner sense, but you didn't always have your head screwed on straight
for sure
the way it is right now. Walk me through that journey.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that my start in hospitality was in a lot of ways, it was in like partying and events. I was a nightclub promoter in New York City. I did club promotion and event promotion even when I was in college, both in St. Louis and then when I transferred to NYU and started doing it in the city. And that kind of grew from there in the city. So I was definitely attracted to some of that, bright lights, excitement, a lot of the energy. I mean, it's fun in your early to mid 20s. But it got to the point where like, it became the main thing and no longer kind of success and whatever company I was working on and having it be financially sustainable, like those things started to take a back seat.
Yeah.
And the main thing became the partying and the drugs and the girls and the booze and all this stuff. And so, I just had a real wake up call. Like he fired me. I was in like 30 grand in credit card debt. Which to me was like, I thought I was never going to get out of it, right? In my mid 20s. And it's funny, I talked to him after I got fired and we still kept in touch when I was getting sober. And he's like, dude, it's nothing. In like 5 years, you're not. And I got into Airbnb, so I was actually working for him that was an Airbnb management company very early on. And I had some of my own properties that they were managing that was kind of like lease arbitrage. And I got into those kind of right around the time that I got sober and got fired. And I ended up paying off my credit card debt in like 6 months.
That's phenomenal.
You know?
Wow.
So,
yeah.
But at the time, I was like, oh, I'm never going to get out of this debt.
30 grand is a lot of credit card debt,
And it compounds very quickly, right? Yeah, you got to watch out for that.
I know people who have been in 30 grand of credit card debt for 15 years.
Oh,
and they don't have a plan to get out of it. It's like, this is my lot in life. Part of me thinks to myself, like, dude, like drive DoorDash 4 hours a night and like get rid of that.
You know what I did? I didn't. I'm almost embarrassed saying this, but I didn't have an apartment for a period of time. It was all Airbnbs, and I was basically just couch surfing my Airbnbs. Whatever was open, I would stay in. So I had like no overhead, no lifestyle expenses. I was like living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
Got me out of debt in 6 months though.
But being willing to do that.
Yeah.
And see, I see people who are very comfortable being in credit card debt, and it's like, well, I don't want to upend my lifestyle just to get out. It's like, dude, your life can't start until you get out of it. Like you're putting everything else on hold to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I think it takes somebody willing to take some extreme measures to get out of the situation and then move on to something that's better for them, to get back to zero, at least. But
and it weighs on your psyche, right? I don't think you can be at your most creative, your most free, realize your fullest potential if you have this like debt kind of fear weighing on you.
Yeah. I was never $30,000 in credit card debt, but at one point I was $4,000 in credit card debt. But I was a college student. And I think that felt like 30 grand as a college student, because it was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this off.
Yeah.
Literally spent an entire summer working for the government in an internship, and all the checks were basically getting cashed and then going into credit card debt. But I told myself, like, I will never, ever like spend money I don't have again.
For a lot of us, you have to go through that. I know my partner went through it. He had a similar deal where, he racked up a bunch of credit card debt. I think that a lot of us have to go through that. And some ways it like builds character and grit, and like you got yourself in that mess, and now how do you get yourself out of it?
Yeah. Where would you be today if you didn't have this mentor in your life to have curbed you back then and be involved with you today?
Yeah, it's really tough to say. I think that I do think I still would have gotten sober, right? If whether it happened then or 6 months later or a year later, I'm grateful it happened when it did. In terms of the business that I'm in today, finding this passion, I mean, he was instrumental in that, right? Like I first got into Airbnbs and short-term rentals largely because of him.
Yeah.
And then, got fired, ultimately got sober. At least in part because of that, because of getting fired. And then I ended up building up my own short-term rental management company, from pulling from my experience of working at that other short-term rental management company. And then I got into unique stays and landscape hotels. He was experimenting with some of that stuff, obviously in Joshua Tree, and I kind of took it to the next level. One of the ways that I think we work really well together, he is extremely good at pattern recognition and being ahead of the curve and finding out things very early. And I've been good at kind of pushing things to the next degree, right? So it's like, oh, okay, cool. You had a converted bus and garage and kind of this unique compound out in Joshua Tree that was doing really well on a sort of, DIY kind of budget. And then I was like, there's something here. Can I take it to the next level with this treehouse hotel concept that's going to blow people away? And, it might cost $300,000-$400,000 a unit, but these units are going to do $150 a year each.
Yeah.
We have a really good balance of, I feel like he's an amazing 0 to 1 guy. And, so far I've been good at kind of, helping steer the ship, attracting the right people around us, and keeping the teams, moving in the right direction.
5 years from now, you're so driven today, you're building something. Where are you ultimately trying to get to? Or is that defined for you at this point?
Yeah, our mission is reimagining hospitality for the modern traveler. So we are trying to create these spaces that blow people away, that are attractive and inspiring and sort of reinvent travel. So that's a very big vision. On the same front, on the social media and branding side, it's how do we connect with the modern traveler? How do we engage with that customer? How are we relatable? How do we evoke emotion, right? So that's what we're driving towards, both with the properties we build and the marketing, and property management that we do for our clients.
Yeah. You mentioned to me that you had this dream of being involved in like software startups, but you weren't a coder.
Oh yeah, I forgot we talked about that.
So
yeah.
Sometimes the progression you see is from like entrepreneurship into going back to the original idea. Like, do you see yourself building a platform
Software
out at some point that's in tune with the mission that you have today?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. We have a tool right now that's in beta that is a very sophisticated revenue management model. We basically feel like most of the revenue management tools, if not all of the ones we've seen, are a bit broken, where there's garbage in, garbage out. And they're responding to a lot of noise that is not actually good data to be pricing off of. So it's kind of this herd mentality, right? Whether it's Airbnb, unsophisticated operators, or even big hotels to some extent, you're all kind of just basing pricing off of each other as opposed to trying to figure out the actual demand and then optimally pricing based on that. You have to factor in what the market is doing, but it's a much smaller factor than I think most people give credit to. So we are creating individual models. I mean, a lot of it's built out in spreadsheets right now for each property, where we are creating a tier system for every day of the year. And then that impacts how we price based on how occupied we are at a given date relative to a target check-in date.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're building this out all in-house. Ultimately, we're going to create an internal tool. Right now, we have an internal tool that kind of spits out an automated price. Hopefully, we get that integrated into actually our, PMS. And we use Price Labs right now, but just to push prices. Like everything is custom, but we're just pushing prices with Price Labs because of the integrations. But ultimately, I'd love to turn that into a consumer-facing software company.
Yeah.
But that's probably years down the line.
It's down the road.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that tie in, because there's this whole roll-up happening right now in property management for the short-term rental industry. I heard this stat that there's something like 10,000 property management companies just in America. And most of them don't have a ton of properties, but some of them have over 1,000 properties that are in there too. I've been exposed to companies and worked with like Host GPO that are kind of rolling up some of those and bringing those together. Really innovative concepts that are there. But how do you look at the roll-up of the industry right now, becoming more professionalized and a lot less of the, I've got one house that I managed, I just bought, and those people being able to be competitive with the pros on that side?
Yes, it's interesting. I don't know that we've seen the proven example of somebody with, let's say, tens of thousands of properties that is doing it super well, right? I mean, Vacasa had a bunch of churn. They were having issues. It's part of why they merged with Casago. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we haven't seen it yet. So I'm still waiting to see if and when that will happen. I'm sure it will at some point. There's a few different players going after that, really big scalable space, but it's a hard business to scale in a lot of ways. You have distributed properties, much harder to scale than a hotel management company.
Sure.
Hotel management company, you might be doing the same revenue in one building as an STR management company is doing in the whole city in 50 properties spread across the city, right? So it's harder to scale. The other piece that I think STR companies have gotten wrong is this belief that they can build a big brand. If you look at the Saunders of the world, investing a ton of money in branding, I don't know that the customer cares about your short-term rental brand. It's kind of soulless and sterile, right? Short-term rental, it's more about the property and the value prop. And I actually think that people prefer more of a personalized host.
Yeah.
We always, on Airbnb, have always used a person for our profile, not a company.
Okay.
And part of that reason is because guests are, I think, a little more lenient on people than they are on companies.
Sure.
If it's a nameless, faceless entity, they will eviscerate you. If it's a person, maybe they'll tell you the feedback privately or whatever. So we've gone that route. And I think that I wouldn't overinvest in brand.
Okay.
I would invest heavily in systems, technology. How do we layer in AI to make ourselves more efficient, more scalable? And I don't think anybody's cracked it yet.
Would you advocate for vacation rental management companies to take the same approach that you've taken with Onera, with branding specific properties as opposed to them saying, we are fill in the blank VR management company, and now we've got our name on the towels and the soap and everything is branded for this management company versus the property itself?
I think that you need to create something that is brand worthy, right? That's the crux of it. You can't just slap a logo or an emblem on something and think that you're creating brand value.
Yeah.
You have to create something that has a story that people connect to, that they care about, right? And so whether maybe you can do that with a short-term rental, vacation rental management company. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, at least not on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
But if there is real brand story and brand value there and something that guests connect to, then I think it's doable.
Yeah.
But we just haven't seen it yet. So yes, I think it's easier, and there's a lot more examples of people creating, you could call it an STR community. I like to call Onera Landscape Hotel. Some would call it, more of a community of STRs. We are very staff light.
Yep.
We operate more like short-term rental, somewhat in that way than a hotel. It's kind of a blend.
Okay.
We've actually shifted a little more to hotel.
You come on the property in Fredericksburg. Is there like a little hut you go to check in? Or
I'm very anti check-in desk.
Okay.
Everybody about the front. So that's one that I think is like addition by subtraction. So I don't think anybody really likes the check-in desk experience. I have not met anyone to date that really likes that experience. Like waiting in a line, having somebody kind of ask you, how your trip went when they don't really care, and you just
not even listening.
They're not listening at all.
Today's good. Okay.
And you're just trying to get your key cards. Like, I don't think anybody enjoys that experience. So if we can remove that and replace it with a frictionless, like remote check-in, you just get to arrive, you go right to your room, you get right in. We're removing that initial friction. That's one of the first experiences of your stay.
Yeah.
Now I think you can do the lobby experience right? If it's very vibey and you got a cool bar and like it's a whole scene, then sure. But I also think sometimes like people are trying to force that environment to make the check-in experience better at the front desk, when it's like first principles, like why do we need a front desk in the first place?
So I'm in Vegas, right? So I'm constantly at these different big properties. Everyone knows the names of Bellagio, Caesar's Palace, you name it. And you see them making this huge effort to turn the front desk into an experience. But you also see a 2-hour line wrapped around where it's like someone's waiting there. I got my champagne, but I'm still lugging my bags around. I got the kids are crying. And it's like, it's not a pleasant experience. Why do hotels still do this? Like, they have the technology. They could send people right to their rooms and have them check in on their phone.
And they do have mobile check-in, but they're not, I don't think they're thinking about it from a guest first, from a customer-centric approach. I don't think they are maniacally focused on what the customer wants. They're not like Amazon, right? They're not like these companies that it's like all about the customer. And part of that's fair, right? These flags, they have multiple stakeholders. They have the owner, that's paying for everything basically, right? And their fees. They have the network of guests. Sometimes they have a management company as well that they're working with. I mean, a lot of times there's like 4 parties involved: owner, management company, flag, and the guest. So it's hard to make all of them happy. Like, I understand that. But it's just not customer first. Like, they all have their own app. Nobody wants to log into your app. Yep. Like, I don't need an app for every, flag hotel I have that's like buried in the back of my iPhone. Yep. I just need like, and Akia does a great job of this. They're a vendor we use where you click on it, digital guide. It's also our unified inbox for everything. So like our guest communications team can, respond to your text, call, Airbnb message, like whatever it may be, all on this platform. And it's also where you get your digital guide. If you can create, whether it's a unique key code, it's kind of maybe a little more old school than like a mobile key card.
Yeah.
But I think that works just fine, right? Like pump in a number, or a mobile key card, but you just click a link and you have that mobile key card there. Maybe you save it to your Apple Wallet or, your mobile wallet, something like that, I think could work and people would love, but they're making you sign into their app and nobody wants to do that. Yeah. So, even myself, like I end up waiting in the front desk line because I don't want to deal with their app.
Yep.
So, and then it's like, and then you're waiting and you're like, oh, I should have done this. And then you're like trying to like figure out how to do it while you're waiting. It's just not good. So,
well, you can always see the mobile check-in line and it's like empty and you're the one kind of like, should I not, but some hotel GMs that I talk to would tell you that, well, we want to find a way to emotionally connect with our guests, and the front desk experience is a very important part of that. but they're not seeing it from the customer's perspective of like, make the lobby something I want to come down to after I'm comfortable in my room, my bags are up there, and then let me come down and have a free drink.
Give me a
Not while
welcome.
I'm lugging it,
Give me a welcome, and if I have a free hand to drink or like a little chocolate or something, like on my way in, and I don't have to wait in a line. I could still go straight to my room. Like you could sort of direct me to where I need to go, give me some useful information, but I don't have to wait on a long line because you don't have to check me in. It's already done.
Yeah.
So there's something there. The hotel industry, I got to tell you, I mean, it's very archaic in a lot of ways. There has not been a strong motivation to innovate for a long time because of, to some extent, the barriers to entry. It was big money that owned hotels.
Yeah.
Right. That's who owned hotels. You needed big money to get into it. So that was a big barrier to entry. So if you had the hotel at that point, you know, you could all just go after these industry norms and standards and, you know, get your whatever it is, 10 to 15, and that's on the high end, return on cost type thing, like your yield, your cap rate.
Yeah.
And everybody's happy with that. Nobody's trying to get like high teens or over 20%, you know, yield on cost, you know, over 20% returns. And they're kind of happy with that. It's a stable asset. I do think that Airbnb and all these hostrepreneurs and people that are coming in sort of with a more fresh perspective and maybe more innovative in some ways, willing to try new things, has pushed hotels to have to think about how can we be a little more innovative. But it's still in that sort of blood and in that culture that they're kind of like stuck in their ways and like, this is how we do things.
Interesting. Last question.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun one. 20 years from now, who's more likely to fall? A Hilton or a Marriott? Or is it an Airbnb or a Booking.com? Which sector, the OTAs or one of the big hotel giants, is more likely to fail in the next 20 years, in your opinion?
That's a really tough question.
I told you no curveballs. I had one for you, just one.
Man, they're so different. It's tough to say. I can tell you why I think both of them will persist in some form or fashion, and then maybe I can get to which one's more likely to work out or not work out. I'll do the thought process.
There we go.
Kind of like my McKinsey consulting case answer.
Let's do it.
So I think that the big flags, they're really good at group business. They're really good at corporate business. You know, that's very relationship driven. It's higher touch. There's this whole point system that you're wrapped into. The business traveler really cares about uniformity, conformity, consistency. They want it to be the same. They want it, you know, to know. Now that may change, but I do think that like there's still an element of truth to that. If you're a business traveler and you want to kind of get in, get out, and there's more bleisure going on, but that is sort of dialing back a little bit from peak COVID when that was the norm and everybody was doing that. So that's where the big flags make their money, and I think will continue to for quite a while. I could see a world though in the future where even the business traveler wants that uniformity and consistency, but also wants experiential.
Mm-hmm.
And they also want something fun and vibey for the hours that they're not working, right? So they want a group that's going to connect with them on social media. Like they want to have that connection. So when the Gen Alphas come of age and all they've ever known is social media, right? Like the big brands will have to adapt, or they will at some point they'll become obsolete.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more likely actually the latter, that they'll become obsolete because I don't believe that innovation is in their DNA. How a lot of these big flags sort of innovate, make the stock price go up, whatever, is they buy other independent brands and then hopefully don't ruin them, but in some cases ruin them or dilute them quite a bit, right? So that doesn't seem like a sustainable long-term strategy. They also they're also gatekeepers of data, right? They're very much gatekeepers. So they're not very owner friendly in some ways. They kind of force you to do things. And we're developing this other property besides for the Florida one. The other project we're working on is an ultra luxury It's an ultra luxury property in Page, Arizona, by Lake Powell, this amazing red rock formations. And it's like 20 minutes from Amangiri with one of the original developers of Amangiri, which is probably the most famous, successful landscape hotel in the country, if not the world. And I had a conversation with this original developer that was basically like, do you think Aman did more for Amangiri, or do you think Amangiri did more for Aman? And I think it's pretty clearly the latter, because you created this one-of-a-kind property that was super, Instagrammable, attracted all the celebrities, in this massive canyon, super grandiose, like all about power and status and all this stuff that Amangiri's about, that built the Aman brand in the US. And so I think it's only a matter of time that owners are going to start to realize that, like, if I build an amazing asset, I'm doing more for the brand than they're doing for me. They're just feeing me to death. I mean, these long-term contracts, right? They're gatekeeping all the data. They own the customer data. And it's becoming increasingly easier for that owner to run a social media content strategy, to connect with that guest directly. It's becoming a lot more democratized in that way. So as I'm talking this through, I think it's more likely the flags, because I think Airbnb I do think that they are more customer focused and guest focused than like some of the big hotel flags. They're thinking about personalization. They're thinking about, how do I serve up the best property at the best price for this person? They have a whole like AI department, right? Like, I believe in them as an innovator that will figure it out more than I believe in these big corporate giants that are sort of, living off of past success and this, like, boomer loyalty locked in network. Yeah. Right. At some point that's going to phase out. Yeah. So I'd bet on Airbnb on that front. Though I don't know about Booking.com. I don't know enough about them. But yeah, Airbnb, I do think, though, it's going to become harder and harder for hosts. So then the question becomes, like, does it just become professional operators? Yeah. Like where does it become? And it probably bifurcates. It's probably like the mom and pops that are doing it themselves, 1, 2, whatever properties. And then I would think that somebody's going to figure out the scale size, or at least like mid-scale. And there'll be a bunch of multi-thousand property VR companies. Yeah. Yeah, I think Costco is a good example of that with their franchise model that's popping up right now. But you heard it here first. Ben Wolff says Hilton's dead in 20 years. So, like, put it down on paper. Unless maybe Hilton works with us and they figure out how to connect with the modern traveler. That'd be the way to do it. Because business travel, with the rise of AI, is going to come down over 20 years. Like, most of us will not have to have jobs. Like, our kids may not ever have to have jobs because our GDP is universal income by AI. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. So does Hilton need to have their business offerings at that point, or is the AI traveling? At that point, it's about leisure. It's about experience, right? Yes. It's like, how are you making me feel something? How are you, like, back to that authenticity, right? If like, you don't need a job, and if AI is doing everything for you, like, what are you're searching for that experience, right? You're searching for that feeling. And, VR may do something with that, but I do think there will always be this, in the real world, kind of like, I want to experience that in real life. At least I think. I could be wrong. Yeah. Yeah. I got to wrap it up with that, because I think you're so well positioned for where the world is going to be going. There is going to be a lot more leisure travel, a lot less business travel down the road. And this seems like it's still just the start. As big as you've already made it, I feel like you have a lot more to come on these lines too. So love what you're doing with the social media management company on the hotel side as well. And I feel like you may crack the code to help some of these properties that maybe are not viral potential to do better on social media too, and help them do social shows or something along those lines to still gather and garner attention. But I appreciate the insights you shared today, and we tried to tie a lot of that stuff back to people who are thinking about starting a business, getting from scratch. Hopefully they're motivated by your story, because you weren't always here, and you've come a long way in the last decade to get where you are today. But people think it's a straight line, and it very rarely is a straight line from where you are to where you are today. So thanks for sharing those insights. I appreciate it. And I know the audience is going to get a lot of value out of this. So thanks a lot. Good to have you here. Appreciate it.